Hey, everybody. Reverend Sandra Bargman here. Happy Friday. I'm coming to you live from the Catskill Mountains, my office here in the Catskill Mountains. And as you know, I am your life anatomy leader. Say that 3 times. That's the new phrase that David Corder and I have coined to understand the ecosystem of our lives. So today, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the edge and the edge of every day. You've heard me mention that in my interview with David when he interviewed me. And then I have subsequently asked questions in my interviews, and will continue to do that when I continue interviewing the rest of the staff, talking with them about edges that they're facing in their work and in their life. And I wanted to do a video that really explored this a little bit more and spoke a little more clearly about it for all of you, because the edge and the edge of every day and the concepts that visiting all of these traditional religions when I was in seminary. But I personally am not affiliated with any organized religion. I was raised as a Presbyterian, but I stepped out of the church when I was in high school. So, in my love of all of these things, where was I going to go to have an expanded an experience with community? And certainly I would go in nature, but where was I going to go that would include community? So, of course, I landed on theater. And I had this great vision of a stage as my altar, which I loved. And once I got this idea and started to explore or re-explore, I should say, because I explored these early on in college, the roots of theater and the roots of what we have come to understand about spirituality in terms of a religious pursuit, those roots are all one and the same, beginning with the Greek maxim, know thyself. So I've got this idea for sacred stages. I'm ordained in 2007, and I immediately go and become a dean of first-year students at the seminary through which I was ordained. And I also was invited in by a friend of mine, an acupuncturist who had her own company, and I came in as the resident spiritual counselor. And I was doing that and having a wonderful time exploring all of that. But I started to have this sense of really missing performing, because all of my focus was going into my service track and not necessarily into my performance track, which is, of course, also service. I view it that way, but I was very much missing performing. So I was beginning to have this sense of this edge, this internal edge of giving, 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 and not having the sense of being an independent performer. So those two things were starting to rub against each other. Around that time, I was out with my husband, who's a scientist, and we were driving by an abandoned community center, and I thought it would be fantastic to own a community center. And if I did, what would I call it? And I said, I'd call it the edge. And my husband immediately said, how about the edge effect? You know, that's a scientific term. It's when two very different ecosystems come together, for instance, a forest and a field. And it's where those two meet, the edge of those two ecosystems, where we find the most diversity, most chaos, and the most vibrance, as we can well imagine. That's where all of the activity is interacting. And it immediately struck me that that's like life, that's the way that two people who come together with different beliefs. And as we know, beliefs are just the stories we have. It's not completely necessarily true, but this belief is my story. And how does that bump up against other people? So anyway, it made great sense to me, which is how I got the idea for the edge of every day. And that internal struggle between service and giving into life and a committed relationship and wanting back my independence to be a creative performer. And the tension of those gave birth to The Edge of Every Day. And once I had this idea, even the way I structured it speaks volumes about the edges. It was a blending. I called it a cabaret ritual. And for those of you who are interested, I was very excited to come up with that word, but lo and behold, it had already been coined by someone else on the other side of the world. But so cabaret ritual is, it's a combination of the style and the venue of cabaret, which is a very intimate way of performing. And it feels very much like an altar to me. And it had elements of theater, of performance art. So the theatricality of that took it at times out of intimacy and into theater. And then I structured it like a bona fide ritual. I had studied and taught ritual when I was a dean of first-year students. So this notion of structuring the show as a ritual that took you down and then brought you back out to explore all of these concepts about edges. So it was this mixture of blurring the edges of these three prototypes into a new hybrid. So, which I think is really wonderful. And the last thing that really struck me was because I had been spending so much time through seminary and then counseling, etc., and working with wedding clients, etc., I was really noticing this understanding that that people focus only on the light in their spiritual journeying and their inquiry and their questing, that somehow it's only about the light. And there was never any discussion about, quote unquote, the dark side. And for those of you who have done any readings with Debbie Ford, for instance, she's done a lot of writing on exploring the dark and the things that we may or may not be proud of, or that we mask up when we're around other people, or we choose not to share with other people. These aspects of our psyche, of our personalities that we have judged somehow to be less than, when in fact they are not less than. They are just simply other ways of understanding the totality of who we are, the wholeness. And so my understanding between the edge of the light and the dark, that coming together and bringing those edges together, really speaks to the wholeness of a person, the wholeness of life. It doesn't separate, doesn't make it them versus us. It makes it whole and unified. So all of those concepts were things that were important to me at the time that I wanted to speak about in this one-woman show. Now I'm going to play a clip for you. Actually, David's going to play it. It's a clip from the show, The Edge of Every Day. And here is, you can see the poster, and here's the CD. And there are clips on my YouTube channel. This particular clip is Everyday People. It's the Sly Stone song that I did a cover of. But in the center, because that song speaks so beautifully to the unity of all people, and it's non-hierarchical. Everyone is important there in this song. But in the center, I wrote some poetry. I like to call it my older lady rap song. But I stuck it in the middle, and I had this idea, and it really encapsulates all of the teachings that I included in this show. So we're going to play it for you now, and then we're going to review it.
Sometimes I'm right, but I can be wrong. has songs. The butcher, the banker, the drummer, and then makes no difference what group I'm in, 'cause I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. There is the blue one who can't accept the green one, but living with the black one, trying to be a skinny one. Different strokes for different folks. I am no better, and neither are you. We're all the same, whatever we do. You love me, you hate me, you know me, and then you can't figure out which bag I'm in. 'Cause I am everyday people. Yeah. There is the tall one who doesn't like the short one for being such a rich one that will not help the poor one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on, and scooby-dooby-dooby, ooh, sha-sha. Lean in, edgy ones, people every day. It's time to make a pledge rerun. It's admission day. You're standing on the ledge undone. Want to back away? Queen bee, you've just begun. Now's your break of day. Life isn't black, no, and life isn't white. It's gray or it's beige, so tasteful too, right? Dualistic nature, balance darkness and light. Cozy up chaos, 'cause you're on the launching site. That which is that, oh, and that which is this, it's a part of the whole. Judge no thing as less. Where sadness meets love and where life meets death, understand the holy contradictions are all blessed. This judgment of every relentless inspection, seduce contradiction. You are a complex one. Resist your inheritance of ghost-like perfection. You merit self-romance, not Facebook post like reflection. Don't hide your madness, you are a magician. Your shadow enhances the color condition. What's major without minor, you jazz musician? Blur all of your lines and blow off the audition. Be choice, be life, be divine dichotomy. Your queen bee will lead you to your own royalty. Be bold, be dazzled, you are the bee's knees. Befriend all the others, 'cause the others are we. Be still beating heart, it's a world relative. Love dares you to change, edge unfurled, forgive. That which separates, rise above. Forgive, boom, boom, bob, hey, give love, be love. So child, remember, bring back your wild. Spellbind, flame the ember, be changed, beguiled. All of life is an edge, move into communion. We're all everyday people in need of reunion. I am everyday people. Yeah, yeah. There is the red one who can't accept the white one, who can't accept the yellow one, who can't accept the black one, who can't accept the blue one, who won't accept the green one for living with the black one, trying to be a skinny one. Different strokes for different folks, and so on and so on. Scooby-Dooby-Dooby. We got to live together. Together.
Thanks, David. It's a lot of fun to revisit that. So anyway, those lyrics, I'm just going to review some of the lyrics and why I chose to say it the way I did and how it ties in with some of these ideas. This lean in, edgy ones, people every day. That's every person. There's nobody that isn't on edge sometimes, no matter where they are in their spiritual journey. Everybody gets edgy and faces these edges. And it's time to make a pledge rerun. It's admission day. You're standing on the ledge undone. Want to back away? Queen bee, you've just begun. Now's your break of day. So that speaks to me about once you're willing to stand at the edge, once you're willing to face those moments, that's when the break of day happens. That's when you can begin to see more clearly how this plays out in your life and how you can walk through the challenges of life. You can walk through the chaos. So life isn't black. No, life isn't white. It's gray or it's beige. So tasteful taupe, right? Dualistic nature. Balance dark and the light. Cozy up chaos because you're on the launch in sight. And I love that because it speaks to this notion that you build a camaraderie with chaos, because as we all know, there's the only thing that's constant in life is change, which some people may call chaos, others may not. But this notion that when things seem to get chaotic and are changing, that we don't need to be afraid of it. We can invite it in and see it for the transformative agenting power that it can be. Now I'm going to jump down to this judgment of every relentless inspection, seduce contradictions. You are a complex one. Resist your inheritance of ghost-like perfection. You merit self-romance, not Facebook post like reflection. This is so timely because, and this is something that this is a lifelong bit of work for me, is this notion of being perfect, of somehow presenting oneself as perfect. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as being perfect. And quite frankly, who would want to be perfect? Because life is ever ongoing, ever learning. We're curious about life. We grow. Our understanding expands. So of course there can be no such thing as being perfect. So perfection to me is the willingness to understand that there is no such thing as perfect. That's perfection. And my favorite that I quote all the time: don't hide your madness. You are a magician. Your shadow, your darkness, that which you want to hide, enhances the color condition. What's major without minor, you jazz musician? Blur all of your lines and blow off the audition. And I really love blow off the audition because as an actor, having done a million of them, and we'll do a million of them, but because it references the notion that it's not an audition for life. It's a performance. So just jump in. Don't keep auditioning. Just dive in. Doesn't have to be perfect. This is your life. Go for it. And be choice, be life, be divine dichotomy, like all of us, have so many complexities internally and dichotomies. And the more that we are willing to know that about ourselves, the more we are willing to understand that about everyone else in our life. Their differences are not wrong. It's only their story. Be bold, be dazzle. You are the bee's knees. Befriend all the others, because the others, there's no such thing as others. It's all we are we. So what are the ways that we can think about in reflection on these lyrics? What are just some of the metaphors that we love about the edge as you continue to think about the edge? And quickly, the first way that I talk about it is boundaries. And this will be on the diagram that I have for life anatomy, the boundaries. Think of them like a Venn diagram, these circles that we consider these the boundaries. But in the center of these boundaries is more of the status quo understanding. And at the edge, as you move out to the edge, that's where possibility lives. And it's so beautifully thought about with this quote from Kurt Vonnegut. I want to stay as close to the edge as I can without going over. On the edge, you see all kinds of things you can't see from the center, big, undreamed things. People on the edge see them first. So the edge is where change makers live, where dreamers and change makers live and see into the future and what is possible. And that's when you read edge walking in my bio, that's what I mean, that I walk on the edges of these communities because I personally like to blur the edges. Another way of thinking about the edge is the cliff. You know, jumping off the cliff, you come to the edge and you jump. And it's a wonderful way of thinking about what we talked about with being under the understanding of what you already know, and jumping and leaping and being in this liminal place where you aren't what you were, you aren't what you jumped from, but you don't yet know where you're going. You don't have a sense of what's new. It's unknown, it's new, it hasn't been created yet. So that's when you read that jump and the net will appear. That's the idea. The new will appear. The unknown will rise up to meet you. And the last way that I love to think about the edge is the double-edged sword that cuts both ways. You know, there's a quote unquote quote positives and negatives about each idea or each trait, or you know, the example that I've got here is the good and the bad. Nothing is really bad, but we love to judge things as bad. That's the point of one of the things that I speak about in the show. These judgments are unnecessary. But for the sake of explanation, we'll use the word bad. The good and the bad consequences of something. You know, as a young person, I was always called very sensitive. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, being called, you're just too sensitive, you're too much, you're too this. And so the double-edged sword of being too sensitive is that you are empathic, that you are open-hearted, that you are very potentially intuitive and creative and willing to walk the edges of the circles and to be a change maker. But the flip side is that can cut in a way that makes you feel a little some insecurity and open to being hurt by this crippling insecurity. And the work being to embrace that insecurity and to not call it bad, come to understand it, be open to understanding it. That's how wholeness happens. Be open to the good and the bad that we judge, so that we can allow all of it to inform us about who we are and how we move in the world. So I'm going to close out now with my thanks, first of all, for you to join me in talking about the edge and how it's important to me and how it's informed my one-woman show, The Edge of Every Day, and spending some time listening to my song. I'm going to close out with the last stanza of that poem. So, child, remember, bring back your wild. Spellbind, flame the ember, be change beguiled. All of life is an edge. Move into communion. We're all everyday people in need of reunion. I love this. This speaks to communion, speaks to the relationships that we spoke about with the ecosystem, the life anatomy, and the ecosystem, that everything in life is about relationships. That's what ecosystems are about. the interfacing with relationships, a relationship with ourselves, relationship with those in our lives, with spirit, however we understand it, with our beliefs, with our stories, you name it. Everything is about relationships, communion. And we're all everyday people in need of reunion. And that speaks about community and being thrilled to be a part of Perfect Fit Wellness virtual community. And I thank you, community, for joining me for this mini talk on the edge of every day. Have a great, great day exploring your edges, and I'll see you next time.